Hello, it is my pleasure to present now a Japanese architect, a very interesting architect. And I have some difficulties to pronounce his name. I did look on the web about, how to pronounce correctly names. And I'm still not sure that I pronounce it correctly. I only found the correct pronunciation for the second name, Otani, SACHIO Otani. I guess something like this. But if I do not pronounce correctly, please be kind and forgive me. But it is a pleasure to present now a few works. This is a short presentation about a remarkable architect. And he was a remarkable architect, and his works deserve to be known. This was the man. He died at 88. And again and again, what is it about Japan that gave to the world so many important architects? Why? There must be something in that culture, in that country. If so many important architects are born there, were born there, will be born there, bravo to him, and bravo to the country that gave to the world such creators. So SACHIO Otani was born on February 20th, 1924, and died on January 2nd, 2013 at 88. He was a noted Japanese architect. Otani was born in Tokyo, and in 1946 graduated from the University of Tokyo. So, immediately after the deadly Second World War, he began his career in Kenzo Tange studio, where he helped design the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, which was built in 1955. And now I regret I didn't include some pictures with this important work that came out of the studio of Kenzo Tange. In 1960, he started his own practice and has subsequently designed a number of memorable buildings, including the Tokyo Children's Cultural Center from 1964. Unfortunately, I was unable to find it on the web. Kyoto, the famous Kyoto International Conference Center, built between 1966 and I think 1972 or so. And I will show, I will present this work because it is a very important work. And then the Kanazawa Institute of Technology from 1969, and the Kawaramachi housing project in Kawasaki, Kanagawa, 1970. I don't know what happened to him after 1970, because he lived a long life, but I couldn't find works, from his last 35 years being alive. Very, very interesting case, a strange case, because he was a major architect. What was not mentioned here was the pavilion he built in Osaka at the famous 1970s Osaka World Exhibition. But I will show some pictures with this. I would say again, remarkable work. I start with the Kyoto International Conference Center, which was built, as I said, between 1966 and 1972 or 1973, and it is perhaps his most important work. Well, building in Kyoto or near Kyoto, or I guess in the proximity of the great city of Kyoto, the spiritual center of Japan, an international conference center was a challenging task, but I think he did a remarkable work. And here it is, in its drama, in its sculpturalness, in its tumultuousness, in its geometrical rigor, and I can only be exalted, because this kind of heroic architecture we need, I would say, even today, although I read that, the 2024 and onwards, architects will be obliged to be less experimental and, to be more restrained. I don't believe this. and I actually thought of a paradoxical or oxymoronic linguistic expression. What about some kind of an exuberant or no, heroic or exuberant or even extravagant sustainability? I know it is a contradiction in terms. I know that there are crises, the climate crisis, the pandemic, the two wars that are ravishing the world at this very moment. But maybe we can take revenge on these, the big problems that the world faces through an enhanced creativity. I am not advocating the usage of more concrete and exhausting the resources of the world, but I am advocating a resourceful art, and I include architecture here, in a resourceless world. So maybe we could compensate through creativity and even through spirituality, and enhanced spirituality, the problems we are facing in other fields. What if Giambattista Vico was right when he said, when he envisioned 4 ages of man? He thought that the history of the world started with the age of the gods. Then after the age of the gods followed the age of the heroes. Then after the age of the heroes followed the age of man. And after the age of man, the age of chaos. And we are probably somewhere in between the age of man and the age of chaos. But if Giambattista Vico was right, it could mean that on the spiral of time, after the age of chaos, we'll start again on the spiral of time with the age of the gods. Now, I know that in our materialistic, prosaic world, this would be inconceivable almost. We prefer to go to Mars, to travel for 8 months or so in the darkness of the cosmos, to arrive on a planet where we cannot for sure ride a bicycle in shorts. So not that this is the purpose of life, to ride a bicycle in shorts, but I think the earth is a privileged place. So what if it is this question, what if indeed we could compensate the misery of so many problems we are confronted with an enhanced creativity that does not forget the gods that we killed, and a certain form of spirituality. And I think Japan is so significant in architecture because it is so rooted in its own mythology, and even in the most extravagant experiments, Japan is able to stay away from shallow fantasies. And this work by this very important Japanese architect Otani, I think, shows this great capacity to do a work which is heroic and which is also somehow complementing nature, because there is here, of course, the proximity of the hills. There are plenty of trees, but there is also the majestic effort of humankind, the Japanese who built this conference center. So, it's very easy to lament. I would not follow the path of Bjarke Ingels, who thinks that we could have sustainability, but without giving up hedonism. I don't think we need more hedonism. Quite the opposite. I think we need perhaps the humbleness of the builders of the Chartres Cathedral, and that we can do even when the resources of the world are diminished, even when we are confronted with all kinds of crises. There is room for spirit. So I wouldn't follow the path of Bjarke Ingels, who thinks we should not give up our comfort, we should not give up hedonism, And yes, we should somehow still be sustainable. No, I would say let's be sustainable, but without forgetting the other side of life which we neglected for so long, and that is vita contemplativa. This work by the Otani is a major work. I mean, look at even at the balance between landscape and untamed nature is a symbiosis, is a fusion here. You know, this is not Katsura, but it has some of that sensitivity which made Katsura possible. Bravo to them, bravo to the Japanese. And yes, the building is heroic. Yes, the building uses a lot of concrete. Yes, the building is called by some or many a brutalist building. But there is a vigorous, virile sensitivity here in this so-called brutalist architecture that I admire. You know, it's a building which you know, was asked for by specific human functions. Yes, it has a scale which is not mimicking false modesty like the Olympic Stadium of Kenzo Kuma. It is a building which shows the tensions between man and nature, but does not neglect nature. So, you know, I personally think there are suggestions for a certain kind of architecture that you know, brings ardor to the soul, and we cannot do that from excessively commercial, you know, positioning ourselves in the world, or from you know, mundane proposals like Saudi Arabia is trying now to you know, fantasize about architecture for the very, 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 very rich, the ultra rich of the world. That's not what we need. Maybe we need more conference centers. Maybe we need more dialogue to talk about the issues that our world is facing. So this building was built, you know, 15 years or so, 20 years after the atomic bombs ravaged Japan. And it is an architecture of rebirth. It is an architecture that you know, try to you know, leave behind the horrors of that Second World War. And Japan did a magnificent job in this sense. It literally, like phoenix, you know, emerged from ashes. Look at this architecture. It's clearly Japanese, but it's also clearly universal. It's powerful. It is an architecture of having faith in creativity, having faith in dialogue, having faith in geometry, and in the capacity of man to conquer the most terrible shadows of life. And the beautiful, you know, white birds in the foreground probably admire themselves you know, such a work, which is not mimicking again a sweetness which would have been out of place here. This is the temple of conversation, is the temple of dialogue, is the temple of man, still man, but because it is rooted in the great traditions of Japan, somehow something of the mythology of Japan is still present in this work. So it's not just, you know, a work without a history, a work without roots, a work without spirit. It's not. But I like very much the diagonals which enliven the work. And we need such provocations, the provocation of the diagonal. It's a powerful work. And the landscape is beautiful itself, and I'm sure the architect had something to do with it as well. The landscaping itself has a robust primitiveness, and at the same time sophistication, a robust sophistication. But maybe the word sophistication is not so appropriate. This is a robust building. Even with some kind of a robust, maybe this is not a compliment to have a robust landscaping. But here I think it's an honest bringing together of the work of man and the work of nature. And as such, I find it very, very successful. It's an architecture of faith, of belief. You know, it's not. This is not a pessimistic architecture. This is not an architecture of despair. This is not an architecture of megalomania, although it is a big building. It is a building rooted in the history of Japan, as I said, but it's also a building looking forward, and it's a building that inspires through its heroic qualities. Now, the pavilion Sumitomo in Osaka from 1970. So while the Kyoto Conference Center was being built, he had the chance to build this pavilion, this very important international exhibition, world exhibition in Osaka, 1970, which had other important buildings built by some important architects. The Roebe, Kenzo Tange, Kikutake, Arata Isozaki, and here we see Otani with a remarkable building. This is a futuristic building, if I am to use a rather fashionable and a little bit shallow word, futuristic. What does it mean? But it does look forward, even for our time. This kind of building, if we build something like this today, would look freshly optimistic. But we don't have that kind of optimism any longer, I guess. But we can learn something from this building as well. Of course, this building was built for, for a show, for an exhibition. But I do think it is important to see such examples of an architecture that, breaks the box, so to speak. Literally, it breaks the box. And it's an urbanistic building in a way. It's like an organism that has some urban qualities. Is somehow a building that wants to be more than itself, more than a building. It wants to become a city somehow. And it's a joy actually to see this kind of dramatic interplay between various parts that together create a symphonic work, and it is a symphonic work. Is it heroic? Yes, it is heroic. I do believe that Frank Lloyd Wright was correct when he created the equation creativity equals exuberance. I do believe Frank Lloyd Wright was correct. And we see exuberance here. Yes, it is an exuberance with a certain maybe degree of naivete. Naivete is difficult to banish from the field of idealism or from the field of exuberance. But it is important to dare to be naive, as beautifully Buckminster Fuller said. Dare to be naive. And Otani, I think, dare to be naive, to believe in technology, to believe in the power of creativity, to believe in industriousness, to believe in the ability to create a hybrid building with various parts of various shapes and to bring them together. It's something. It is some kind of a bioarchitecture here. I don't know if he was one of the metabolists. Now, when I searched for images for this building, I came across this picture, but I'm not sure that this plan was is truly the plan of the building by Otani. Although it seems to be, but it was named differently. So I'm a little bit confused. But when I look at this plan, doesn't matter. It belongs to this building and to this architect or to some other architect. I see some kind of a dancing of these around around parts of the building, you know, and I think of the dancing, the beautiful dance of Henri Matisse. Some of that dancing, as a suggestion, was probably also employed by Stephen Hall in the large housing scheme that he built in China. It is about dancing somehow. You know, you see the multiplicity in unity. You see the coming together, giving hands, and these parts coming together testify about you know, the joy of being alive, the joy of being together. It's about togetherness, but it is about the togetherness which does not erase individuality. Another building that I think it's worth studying and reflecting on by this, I would say, very special architect. Yeah, you know, I took this picture from a website where you see it was called the Sumitomo Fairy Tale Pavilion. Well, maybe we should attempt to create fairy tale buildings. Why not? Why not try to respond to the misery of so many problems by bringing back dreams? Now, a high-rise housing project, which he built in Kanagawa, also an interesting work. Let's read a little bit about him. This building was designed by SACHIO Otani and completed in 1972, with its design intended as an alternative to the usual alternative block. The lower half of the building is splayed, resulting in a public space underneath, which has seemingly never really been utilized fully and has ended up just being an area where the residents park the bicycles or the kids play ball games. This happened also to l'unité d'habitation. This is a very different kind of building from l'unité d'habitation by Le Corbusier. But the space underneath l'unité d'habitation also is not used. And in that case, probably with more reasons than in this case. Let's look at some pictures of this building. These are the, should we call them blocks of flats? Apartment buildings. What is interesting here is that he brought the public dimension of architecture within the building, and it's that large space that he created, which is tall, several floors tall, and there he imagined probably a social life full of energy and inspiration. This is that central space, a nave, almost a cathedral nave underneath the building, or in the lower part of its being. An interesting idea. It was not maybe so successful in terms of how it was used, but an interesting idea. And again, this kind of a heroic gesture in the name of publicness, in the name of togetherness. It is about togetherness. Now, of course, not many blocks of flats in this world or apartment buildings could afford something like this. But it is in a way a shame that such a majestic space is used now just to park motorcycles and bicycles. But then, you know, maybe it is intimidating, this space, you know, or maybe it needs some green, you know, some ivy climbing on the you know, on the sloping plains of this you know, impressive space, with light coming from above. Another courageous courageous building by this courageous architect. This is, just a detail, this stair, but this staircase, it is an architectonic element which doesn't leave you indifferent. It is about architecture here. And you see, this is the work of an architect. It's not the work of just a builder. It's not just, this is not just a building. It is architecture. And now, I show this is Institute of Technology, the Kanazawa Institute of Technology from 1967 to 1982, another important work by this very interesting architect. I mean, look at this section. You can tell from the section that this is a building that is alive, that the stomach of architecture, the stomach of this building is visceral. You see it there clearly that it's again about the publicness of architecture, the public dimension of architecture, the spaces where people come together. And somehow the building, even towards the outside, evokes this kind of longing for "Zu and I," to refer to a famous book by Martin Buber. In this case, we see the building which extends to an extent towards the outside, and in that sense, it's an attempt, an invitation towards uniting itself with the outside world. It is an attempt to, again, towards togetherness. And this attempt happens also inside the building, not just outside of the building. Yes, a lot of concrete. Yes, we know concrete pollutes. At that time, there wasn't a concern with this, unfortunately. But still an inspiring architecture. And look at the as I call it, the stomach of the building. Here it is clearly a dynamic space which invites people to interact. And you interact visually or otherwise with people of various floors. But okay, it is an institute of technology. But being an institute of technology doesn't mean that it has to be inhuman. You see there, the stair is sculptural. You see people sitting on the stair. You see someone here at the table looking to the left. You see some people in the background, doing other things. So it's again about interaction. And it is an interaction which is not formal, which is not restrictive, which is not mimicked, and which does not try to say that everything will be without some form of conflict. In architectural terms, we seem to discern here, certain shadows, so to speak, Jungian shadows, troubles, conflicts. There is tension. But this tension is part of the reality of any interaction. It's a very dynamic space. We can only wonder what this student perhaps feels, looking downwards, in this atrium. And this is the last picture. In fact, it's the least glorious picture from the work of this architect. Maybe I should have ended with a different kind of picture. But I think all in all, this short and imperfect presentation does show that this architect deserves attention. And I hope by February, when there will be his birthday, I will be able to amplify the presentation and subsequently know more about him, because I am very curious about this architect. Thank you.